Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at an album released by Paul Simon in 1983, so it's his album Hearts and Bones. So I'll just be talking a bit about the making of the album today. I'll show you my vinyl copy of it, and then I will look at each of the album songs in detail. Just as I said, was Paul Simon's 6th solo album, released on the 4th of November in 1983. The album has a really sort of interesting and quite long backstory. Basically, Simon had recently reunited with Art Garfunkel, playing a hugely successful show in New York Central Park in 1981. Originally, this was just intended as like a one-off reunion performance. However, such was its success that more dates were added until it kind of grew into a worldwide tour. The record label which Simon was signed on at this point, Warner Brothers, then encouraged them to work on an album together. However, the recording of it was beset with many problems. Firstly, the songs which Simon had written were not composed with two voices in mind. So when Art Garfunkel began writing harmony parts to these songs, Paul Simon felt that he'd lost a lot of creative control over these songs, many of which were some of his most personal songs he'd ever wrote. Also in the studio there was a lot of tensions, with some saying that Garfunkel was treated by Simon and some of the engineers merely as a session vocalist. However, others say that Garfunkel was trying to exert a bit more control on the process. Now he was probably due, wanted to record his parts completely alone, truth be told, they probably had just grown apart by this point. They hadn't really worked together since 1970s Bridge Over Troubled Water, so it had been a long time since they had recorded new music together. Simon would later describe the recording process with Garfunkel on this album as torturous, and ultimately decided at some point in 1983 to wipe Art Garfunkel's vocal parts completely from the recording. There is, though, some remnants of this failed project bootlegs off the album, which was to be called Think Too Much, have appeared online as studio outtakes, as well as there's some live recordings of various songs he did from this album on their world tour. Overall though, my view of the whole thing is that Art Garfunkel didn't really add much to these songs here. It was a little bit unnecessary sort of thing. He didn't really add a lot to these tracks. Sometimes only singing the middle eighth on some off the tracks. But yeah, it would be eventually released in November as Hearts and Bones, of course a Paul Simon solo record, and it did go largely unnoticed in the record buying public, only reached number 34 in the UK and number 35 in America, and not yielding any hit singles for Paul Simon. In the years since, though, it has been regarded as an underrated album in Paul Simon's catalogue, an album which didn't get bad reviews when it was released, but definitely went unnoticed really, but has certainly been getting a appraisal. But anyway, I will now show you my vinyl copy of it here. This is just a bog standard original UK copy of it here. Nothing too special about this one here. So there's the cover. I'm not a massive fan of the cover personally. It's it's quite an 80s cover, this one here. There's back of it there. It kind of has a murky kind of feeling to it, this slightly blurry photo of Simon on the front of it there. Nice in the sleeve of it though. There's no gatefold or anything, but a nice in the sleeve, as I said. We've just got the lyrics to it there, a picture of Paul Simon, and then more lyrics there with a couple of the inspirations behind a few of the tracks which I will get into. So yeah, that is we looked at the vinyl record here. So I will now look at each of the album songs in detail, scoring each track out of 10, and then using those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the album opens up with a song called Allergies, which I think is a really solid opening song. I think it's got a great production on it, really clean cut, very crisp. Slightly 80s sound on it, as we said, but it is a good song though, and like the way it builds throughout the track, starting with the very quiet introduction, but then the more slightly African style drumming on it, precursor to his follow-up album Graceland in some ways, and then a brilliant guitar solo from the session musician he played in it, a guy called Al De Nyla, I think that's how you say like his name, but yeah, he does a brilliant guitar solo like on this one here. Lyrically, it is a great song about sort of like a person's like insecurities, both like sort of like both personal and also like romantically, like with lines such as "My heart is allergic to the woman I love and it's changing the shape of my face." So yeah, I just really like this song here. Like, it's one which not a lot of people rate highly, but I think is a really great opening track. So we give that one a 9 out of 10.
Hearts and bones.
And then the next track up is probably my favourite on the album. I would say it's the title track, Hearts and Bones, which, yeah, is just a wonderful, wonderful song. It's a lovely, very sort of softly played acoustic track. Great lyrics on it, basically about like a road trip which he and then girlfriend Carrie Fisher went on. Yeah, it's just a really, really nice song. Beautiful sort of like guitar playing on it, like I said, like really nice, like sort of like subtle like percussion work like as well. Everything about this song is just really perfect. And yeah, like it is one like which like he like continues like to perform live. And like yeah, like for obvious reasons, because it is a really, really, really great song.
When times are mysterious, serious numbers are eager.
And then the next track up is called When Numbers Get Serious. And this is a more kind of upbeat like song, this one here. Slightly dated track in terms of like production wise. Lyrically, it's just a bit of like a throwaway song about how like numbers like sort of like affect like everyday life sort of thing. Very busy arrangement like on it as well. Like Simon like joined up like so like the verse chorus bit like off When Numbers Get Serious like to like a like unused song called Shelter Off Your Arms, like which became like the bridge like of this track here. Like yeah, like it's a good song, like quite pleasant to listen to, but really like it's not a highlight it's really not a highlight of the album for me personally. So yeah, When Numbers Get Serious would get a 7 out of 10.
Maybe I think too much. Maybe I think too much. Oh.
Next track up is called Think Too Much B. Now this is the first of two versions of the track Think Too Much. And yeah, this is a slightly shorter, more sort of like slower version, like off like the track with like this really nice sort of like mariba bit like played out throughout the song. Again, sort of like shows like Simon flexing like his world music muscle, like which like he would like later like go on to evolve like on albums like Graceland and Rhythm of the Saints. This was kind of like when that thing like sort of like started like in some ways like for like him. Like lyrically, it's about how like too much contemplation like just makes you go like round in circles like rather than finding like definitive answers. And it's maybe a little bit like unnecessary because we have got the other version like only like 2 tracks away, like which is like for me a slightly better like more like well-rounded version like of the song. But it is still a nice pleasant like sort of like interlude like on the album. So yeah, I Think Too Much B would get a 7 out of 10.
Presto, a song about the moon.
Now, the next track up is another favourite of mine, like on the album, and it's a track which I don't really hear like getting talked about too much from the record, but it is a song about the moon, and I just really like it. I really like the lyrics on it, basically about sort of like the process like of songwriting. It's quite sort of like casual, sort of like conversational style lyrics like on this one here, which I just really like. I really like his vocal on it, like how like it sort of like builds and like sort of like accentuates like the song and the lyrics like as he goes through the track. So yeah, I really can't find fault with that one. It is just a really great song. Like, I love it like when like it comes on shuffle. So yeah, Song About the Moon there would get a 10 out of 10.
Maybe I think too much.
And then we carry on with the second version of the song, I Think Too Much. And this is a more kind of upbeat and like funkier version like of the song. This song actually features the legend like Nile Rodgers like playing like his trademark like funky guitar like on it. I just really like, again, the lyrics like on the track. Like a really good line is like, have you ever experienced a period of grace when your brain just takes a seat behind your face? Like yeah, it's just a good song. So maybe slightly dated production wise like again, but like understandably was one of the singles, like very sort of like crisp sort of commercial sounding song Fortunately, like as a single, went unnoticed completely, failed to chart pretty much everywhere, which is a shame because it is a good, fun little pop song there. So yeah, that one would get a 9 out of 10 from me.
Everybody loves the sound of a train in the distance.
Okay, and then the next track up is one of the more popular songs from the album. I would say it's a Train in the Distance, which yeah, like this song like gave the title to like his like greatest hits album, like Negotiations and Love Songs. Like lyrically, this song like is like really good about sort of like the ending like of like a relationship, like the lines like such as like the man and the woman remain in contact. Let us say it's for the child. Like so, just about sort of like a sort of like the ending like of like a like relationship. Again, it is a good song for me personally. Never been massive favourite track of mine. I think it kind of drags out a little bit towards the end, but it is just sort of like your typical like Paul Simon song there, like sort of like quality lyrics, like kind of like really good like really good like sort of like quality songwriting there. So yeah, that one would get a 9 out of 10 for me.
Renae and Georgia agreed with their dog after the war.
The next track up now probably has one of the longest song titles which I've ever come across. So it's Renae and Georgia Magritte with their dog after the war. And this is a very sort of like abstract and like surreal song, like inspired like by like a picture which you've seen like of like Renae Magritte, like who was like sort of like a Belgian surrealist artist, like and like his wife, like seen it like in like a magazine like with the caption like Renae and Georgia Magritte with a dog after the war like on it. So that sort of like triggered something like in him, like he started like to write like this song, but like also touching on like themes that such as like doo-wop music, like kind of like so like the music like which like Simon like grew up with and like was like influenced by, like he calls it like the deep forbidden music they've been longing for like off like their like younger days. So yeah, like it's just a really creative song, this one. I think the production works like on it really well. This was one of the tracks which Simon reimagined on like his album from last year called In the Blue Light, which he does like a really like nice like sort of like remake like of it, but I think you can't beat the original of it though. So yeah, this one I think would get a 10 out of 10. Really fantastic song.
Cars are cars all over the world. Cars are cars.
And then the next one up is definitely the weakest one on the album for me, and probably for like a lot of people. It's called Cars Are Cars. And this is, yeah, just a really sort of silly track, I think. I certainly, like, in terms of like the chorus, like, which gets really annoying, I feel. The bridge, like, verse bit kind of, like, redeems, like, the track, like, where it's a bit more softer and, like, reflective, like, where, like, we're always sort of, like, pumped, like, back into that cars all over the world, like, chorus bit, which just gets really annoying. Again, it's dated production on it. It's just really kind of Simon sort of, like, trying to have, like, a like, commercial hit, like, with, like, this song here. Like, was never, like, a single, though, and like yeah, like even if it was, I don't think it would have set the charts alight. But yeah, Cars Are Cars will get 4 out of 10. Definitely the weakest one on the album.
From the late great Johnny Ace.
But then we close the record with a song called The Late Great Johnny Ace, and there is quite a lot to say about this track. Like it's sort of like structured really interesting, sort of like about like sort of like 3 verses, like kind of look at 3 events like which took like decades apart, like in like Paul Simon's life. The first was the suicide of 50s rocker Johnny Ace, like he killed himself like with like a shotgun like while playing Russian roulette. We then move on to like the 60s, like where like Simon is like living in England, like with like his like girlfriends, like it says like the year of the Beatles, the year of the Stones, the year after JFK, and then like the final verse like sort of like looks at Paul Simon's shock like at hearing the news like of like John Lennon's assassination, like so kind of like it's like a tribute like to like what Simon called like the 3 like Johnny Aces, like Johnny Ace himself, John F. Kennedy, and like John Lennon. So yeah, like this is another track as well at which he performed at the Central Park concert. And it's quite significant because just as he sang the line about like John Lennon like being dead, like a like stage like invader like so like came up like onto like the stage like and sort of like and like well so like invaded the concert like really like, which was quite a sort of like must have been quite a scary thing like for Simon, like kind of like just singing like about like the death of like John Lennon for some like madman to be coming up like onto like the stage just like going for him must have been pretty scary like experience there. But yeah, like and then like the track track ends like with like sort of like a string piece like by like Philip Glass, so sort of like ends the album like on like a rather sort of like slightly sour, like sort of like slightly sad like end to the record, but I think quite effective. So yeah, The Late Great Johnny Ace, really good song. Again, not a track which I would tend to play like in isolation. It's not one of my absolute favourite like go-to Paul Simon songs, but on the album, I think it works really, really well. So yeah, that one would also get a 9 out of 10.
Every song we played was for the
So yeah, this album was overall score 84%. So I think this is a great album here from Paul Simon, like a much like misunderstood album. Like it's definitely like an interesting point like in like his career, like kind of like probably like the lowest point, like I would have to say. Like it was certainly like it would be like another 3 years like before like he sort of like bounced back like with like the blockbuster Graceland. But this album has a much more sort of sad and like more reflective mood to it. It was written like kind of like during like his like relationship like with Carrie Fisher, like their like marriage like was like very short lived. And like this is like the album like where Simon like sort of like pulls like all like his feelings like about that like into it. So yeah, great record here, Hearts and Bones, like really underrated record. Like so yeah, like if like you are like a fan like of Paul Simon, definitely check this one out. Like it is like I would say one of the highlights of his discography. So yeah, that's been my review of Hearts and Bones. If you've got any requests for future reviews, please do leave them down below, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.